There's a story of a sister, her name is Aminah Asslimi. She passed away in a car accident a few years ago, may Allah bless her in her grave. And it's subhanAllah, she was responsible for the Eid stamp. In America they had their Eid stamp to celebrate cultural diversity. There was their Eid stamp. Because to recognize Muslims as a people of faith in this country. And she fought for that. She tried very hard for that. But her story of coming to Islam is very touching, and it reminds you of Sahaba radiallahu anhum's times. In the 70s, Oklahoma. Oklahoma is above Texas, and it's the Bible Belt as well. Anything below Kansas and Atlanta and all these states are all known as the Bible Belt. That's what they call it, the Bible. Okay. The same way when you go India, Pakistan, or a Middle Eastern country and you see a masjid on every corner, you'll see a church on every corner, literally. And they're actually not churches like Europe closed up or sold to Muslims. They're actually churches that have activity going on, very, very active. So this sister, she became Muslim in Oklahoma in 70s. And her story is amazing because she was married, she had children, like two children she had. And she wanted to enroll in university to take some classes. And in order to make up her credits, she had to take a class that had nothing to do with her subject. And she didn't want to take it because she stepped into the class and she saw Middle Eastern men. Okay? Muslim men from, this is the 70s. Yeah? She said, what am I going to do in that class? But I have to take it. She said, I'm going to go to that class with the intention of converting these men to Christianity. So she went to that class and she started engaging in dialogue and conversation with these brothers. And they would talk to her about Islam. She would tell them about Christianity. They gave her a Quran. She started reading. She started reading and reading for 1 year, 2 years. Her husband noticed that there are some changes coming in her. Because she stopped going to the bars with her husband. She stopped going out. She was engaged in her studies of Islam. Her husband accused her of infidelity because her lifestyle had changed, so on and so forth. So finally what happened was she didn't go back to the class, 2 years passed, but these brothers came knocking on her door. And they came knocking on her door and they started speaking to her. And they engaged in a long conversation. On that same day, she took the Shahada. When she took the Shahada and she became a Muslim, this information was horrific news for her family, because this is the Bible Belt. They're Baptists, Southern Baptists, Independent Baptists. They're evangelicals. They're hardcore, very hardcore. How hardcore we are on Deen Islam, they're very hardcore in Christianity. When she informed her husband, he filed for a divorce instantly. Her mother deserted her. Her sister, who was a psychologist, thought she had some mental issues. Her father had a shotgun. By the way, you get licenses for that very easily. I'm not encouraging it, I'm just telling you. He was very angry. He wanted to kill her. The husband filed for a divorce, and when it came to the custody of the children, this was the touching part. When it came to the custody of the children, the court said to the mother, to the woman, that you make a decision. We'll give you 20 minutes in the court to make a decision. We can only grant you custody if you change or renounce your faith of Islam. This was in the 70s. Now they couldn't do that. Now you can't do that in court. They don't have those rights to do that. But in that time, depending on the court you go to and the judge, anything could happen. This is the 70s. They said, we give you 20 minutes. You keep your faith, you don't get the children. If you renounce it, we'll give you the children. She says I was reading her article. She says this was the most difficult decision I've had to make in my life. Your children, and as a mother, you have a deep connection with your children that we can't describe, and men will never understand it. Of course, we have a very deep connection with our children, but it's a connection we won't understand, that mothers have. She said, on the one hand, I want my children deeply, and doctors had told her that she can't have more children after these two. She had some medical issues. The doctor said, you can't have more children. On the other hand, her deen was profound in her heart. Does she live her life a lie and dishonest just for the sake of her children? Or does she choose Islam and place her trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? She chose what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what reminds me of Sahaba radiallahu anhum's time. It was amazing. It's an amazing, inspirational story. You can even Google it, you'll find it. Aminah Asslimi, her name is. She chose Islam. She lost custody of her children. But what does Allah say in the Quran? If you have non-Muslim parents, Allah says, you should still treat them with kindness. وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. Allah says, فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا. Don't obey them if they make you do shirk, or if they make you do kufr, or if they invite you to any disobedience of Allah. Don't obey them in that matter, but treat them kindly. Always treat them kindly. وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. So she continued establishing ties or maintaining ties with her father. They didn't want to speak to her initially. And she continued the ties with her sister, her mother, her father. Husband had divorced her anyway, is her ex now. Suddenly what happened was, after many years, sometimes the road is very long. We can't give up. And sometimes we get very, very frustrated early on, and we think, half a year, 1 year, how much longer am I going to try? And we lose hope. But we can never lose hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Never. It's a long road sometimes. The journey is very long. But we have to have perseverance. Like Ayyub alayhi salam. These are prophetic traits. So she continued with this, maintaining ties with her parents. One day what happened was, her father calls her and says, you know this Islam you talk about? You're a Muslim. You're Muslim. There's Islam you talk about. What's your holy book? She says, it's the Quran. He goes, I want to read it. Because they saw her life and how straight her life was. An honest life that she was living. So he said, I want to read this book, but don't tell your mother. And then she gets a call from her mother after maybe a couple of months or a few weeks. Same message. I want to read the Quran, but don't tell your father. And then they were both convinced that this is the deen for them. They were certain. Conviction had reached their hearts. And they asked their mother, and they asked her, how do I become one of you? How do I become Muslim? Her father became Muslim. Her mother became Muslim. Her sister became a Muslim. Her ex-husband became Muslim. And from the two of her children, one became a Muslim. Not both, but one. And she had remarried, and Allah gave her children as well. It's an amazing and touching story.